Let her go." Her voice trembled, but it cut the silence like broken glass. Both men turned. One sneered, the other's hand twitched toward the pistol at his side. Rain slicked the cobblestones beneath their boots. The street lamp above flickered once, then steadied, throwing their faces into harsh shadow. Brenda's hands clenched around the metal pail she carried, the cool handle biting her palms. She'd only meant to pick up flour for her employer's kitchen to get home before the storm. Now she was staring at a blonde child curled against the brick wall, a gun pressed to the girl's ribs. "Walk away, lady," the taller man growled. "This don't concern you." But Brenda didn't move. Her heart pounded. She looked down at the pail at the white powder inside, and something in her snapped. She swung. The bucket arced through the air. Mid-flight, the lid popped free, and a cloud of flour burst outward, blinding both men in a white haze. One screamed, clawing at his eyes. The other staggered back, coughing and swearing. Brenda lunged forward. "Run!" she shouted, grabbing the girl's wrist. They bolted. Shoes splashed through puddles, footsteps chasing them through the alley. But behind them, windows cracked open, lights blinked on. A neighbor's voice called out. Sirens wailed somewhere close, echoing off the wet brick. By the time the police arrived, the flour still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Brenda crouched beside the girl, shielding her from the wind, arms trembling with adrenaline. A young officer knelt. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" The girl whispered, "Chloe. Chloe Lewis." The officer's eyes widened. He pressed his radio. "We've got her. James Lewis's daughter. She's alive." Brenda blinked, the name only faintly familiar, but she had no time to think. Flashbulbs burst at the alley's end as police swarmed the scene. Brenda Jackson, quiet maid of the Hayworth household, was about to become the most talked-about woman in the city. The police station smelled like stale coffee and damp wool. Brenda sat stiffly on a bench beside the little girl, hands clasped tight in her lap. Her skirt was damp, the hem caked in alley grime. The pail was long gone, left behind in the chaos, and her fingers still tingled from the throw. Across the room, officers moved briskly. Radios crackled, papers rustled. No one looked at her for long, but she could feel the weight of the glances. Someone had taken her name. Another had thanked her vaguely, then disappeared. Brenda didn't know what she was supposed to do now. She wasn't used to this, being seen. Beside her, Chloe's legs dangled off the bench. The blanket around her shoulders was too big, slipping down one arm. She clung to a paper cup of water, and to Brenda's hand like it was the only thing anchoring her. "She saved me," the girl had whispered again when they were brought in. To the officers, to the EMT, to whoever asked her name. Brenda hadn't known what to say. Now the child's head leaned against her arm, silent but alert, like a cat watching for movement. Her blonde hair was matted, her cheeks streaked with dirt and tears. She hadn't said a word since they sat down. Then the door opened. Brenda looked up and saw him. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, drenched from the rain but radiating heat, like he'd run the whole way. His coat flared open, eyes sweeping the room in tight, panicked lines. "Chloe," he breathed. The girl's head jerked up. "Daddy!" She leapt from the bench. Brenda's hand slipped from hers as Chloe flung herself into his arms. James Lewis dropped to his knees to catch her. He clutched her to his chest, eyes clenched tight, breathing like a man surfacing from a nightmare. "I've got you, baby, I've got you." Brenda stood unsure whether to give them space or stay where she was. Her legs felt oddly distant, like they belonged to someone else. James pulled back just enough to look at his daughter's face. Then he looked past her, right at Brenda. "You're the one who—" His voice caught. "Thank you. I don't even know your name." "Brenda. Brenda Jackson," she said quietly. He nodded, swallowed hard. "You saved my daughter's life." "I just did what anyone—" "No," he cut in. "No, you didn't. Most people would have walked away. You ran into it." Brenda shook her head, flustered. She was just a little girl. I didn't know who she was. James stood slowly, Chloe still holding his hand. "Doesn't matter. You acted. That matters more than anything." A detective approached then. Monroe, she'd been introduced briefly, and took James aside. Quiet, fast words exchanged. Brenda caught only fragments. No ransom demand, unusual coordination, no prints on the weapon. James's face darkened. Brenda turned back to Chloe, who was watching her again, eyes wide and solemn. "You okay now, baby?" she asked softly. Chloe nodded, but didn't let go of her father or take her eyes off Brenda. Monroe came back, holding out a card. "Miss Jackson, we'll need a formal statement tomorrow. But for now, thank you. You very likely saved 2 lives tonight." Brenda stared at the card. "I'm not sure what I did." "Sometimes that's how it is," Monroe said. "Courage never feels like it does in books." James had stepped closer now. "Let me drive you home. Please, it's the least I can do." Brenda hesitated. It felt strange, wrong to accept anything, but her hands were still shaking. The night wasn't over, and Chloe was still looking at her like she was the only safe thing in the room. "All right," Brenda said quietly. "Just this once." They stepped out into the night together, James, Brenda, and Chloe, into a city that would soon know her name. But for now, she was just a maid with flower on her skirt, a child's hand in hers, and no idea the storm was only just beginning. Brenda didn't sleep that night, not after the police station, not after the car ride with James Lewis, with Chloe curled against her side in the back seat like they'd known each other longer than an hour. The billionaire had offered her the back seat while he rode up front, which was odd enough. But odder still was how gently he spoke to his daughter, how his voice cracked when he told her everything was going to be okay, even though Brenda wasn't sure it was. They dropped her off just after midnight. The building was quiet, worn, the kind of place where people kept to themselves and locks clicked twice. Brenda had hesitated at the curb. "Are you sure you'll be safe here?" James asked, stepping out with her. He glanced up at the brick facade, unsure what to make of it. "I've lived here 10 years, Brenda said. "It's not the Ritz, but it's home." She'd expected him to leave it there, but instead he pulled a card from his coat. "My assistant's number, and mine too. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call. Don't wait." Brenda nodded. "All right." Chloe was asleep in the back seat, blanket pulled up to her chin. As Brenda turned to go, the girl stirred. "Brenda?" She leaned back in through the open door. "I'm right here, sweetie." Chloe blinked, barely awake. "Don't go far." Brenda managed a smile. "I won't." The next morning she was up before sunrise, standing in the cramped kitchen of her apartment, like she'd done 1,000 times before. Only now, the countertop news radio played a name she didn't recognize at first. Her own. "Brenda Jackson," the reporter said. "A domestic worker for a wealthy family in Kensington reportedly disrupted an attempted abduction late last night using nothing more than a bucket of flour." She turned it off. By the time she reached the Hayworth residence, Mrs. Hayworth was already waiting at the door, newspaper in hand, expression unreadable. "You're on the front page, Brenda." Brenda smoothed her uniform. "Ma'am, I didn't ask—" "No, I know. Come in." Inside, the house smelled of beeswax and old books, familiar, safe. Except now it felt different. The silence was heavier. Mrs. Hayworth stood in the doorway of the kitchen. "We saw the footage this morning. One of the neighbors caught it on security camera. The bucket, the flour. Chloe, it's all over the internet." Brenda looked down. "I just acted. I didn't know who she was. And now the world does." There was no anger in her voice, only concern. Maybe even something close to awe. "The Lewis family is powerful, very visible. This won't be easy." "I didn't do it to be seen," Brenda said softly. Mrs. Hayworth nodded. "That's exactly why it matters." Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring, then answered on the 4th try. "Brenda, it's James Lewis." She didn't speak, uncertain what to say. "I know it's a lot," he said, "but Chloe's asking for you. She won't eat. She won't speak to the therapist. She won't even let me near her without crying." Brenda closed her eyes. She's been through a trauma. She needs time. "I think she needs you." Brenda hesitated. She was a maid. She scrubbed floors, folded linen, baked lemon tarts. She didn't belong in penthouses or press conferences or viral videos, but she remembered how Chloe had held her hand all night, the way she hadn't let go, even when her father had arrived. "She said something," Brenda murmured. "Back at the station." "What?" Brenda repeated it carefully. "She said the men were looking for something. She said, 'They want what Daddy has.'" A long silence followed. When James spoke again, his voice had changed. "I need to speak to you. In person." That evening, a sleek black car arrived outside Brenda's apartment. The driver greeted her by name. Inside was James, dressed down, but still tense, his phone clutched tight in one hand. He didn't waste time. "I think Chloe's right," he said. "There's something they were after, and it wasn't ransom. It was something she might have taken by mistake." Brenda sat back in the leather seat. "What kind of something?" James pulled out a small drive from his jacket pocket, a standard USB. "This is a duplicate," he said. "The original went missing from my home office the same day Chloe disappeared. It contains architecture plans for a prototype, communications tech. If it ever leaked, it could cripple half the industry." "And you think she had it?" "I think she picked it up without realizing, probably stuck it in a toy bag or pocket. But someone knew, someone inside the company, someone with access. That's how they knew where to find her." Brenda rubbed her hands together, uneasy. "So, this was never about her?" "She was collateral," James said. "And now anyone who helped her escape might be a target." His eyes met hers. No theatrics, no arrogance, just fear. "I'm offering full protection. Stay at the estate. Let my team watch over you." Brenda was silent for a moment. "And Chloe?" "She keeps asking when you're coming." Brenda didn't answer, but she didn't say no. They pulled into the underground garage of a glittering glass tower. Guards with earpieces nodded as James led her toward a private elevator. Inside, Brenda caught her reflection in the gold trim, tired, out of place, still in her second-best shoes. But when the doors opened, Chloe ran across the marble floor and threw her arms around her. "Brenda," she whispered, "you came." And just like that, she wasn't here for the cameras, or the headlines, or even for James Lewis and his empire. She was here for Chloe. And she wasn't going anywhere. The penthouse smelled of ozone and lemon polish, the kind of sterile luxury Brenda had only ever glimpsed in magazines. Glass walls opened to a sweep of skyline, and the city below glittered like a spill of stars. Yet the air inside felt tense, brittle, like a storm trapped behind windows. Brenda sat on the edge of a cream leather sofa, hands folded in her lap. She still wore her uniform, it felt like armor, something familiar in a place where nothing was. Across from her, Chloe sat cross-legged on the rug with a doll in her lap, staring down but not playing. Every so often, her small fingers would drift to touch Brenda's skirt, as if to reassure herself she was still there. James paced. His tie hung loose, his sleeves rolled up. In his hand, he held the same small drive he'd shown her in the car. "I can't believe this," he muttered. "The board thinks I'm overreacting. Security swears our systems are airtight, but someone leaked our prototype. Someone knew Chloe had the drive." Brenda said nothing. The weight of his world was pressing against hers, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. She looked instead at the girl on the rug. Chloe's blonde hair fell in a curtain over her face, but Brenda saw the way her shoulders tightened at her father's voice. "Chloe," Brenda said gently, "honey, can you tell me about that day? The one with the men?" The girl hesitated. Then slowly, she nodded. "They were mad," she whispered. "They said Daddy was hiding something. They said if I gave it to them, they'd let me go." James stopped pacing. "What exactly did they ask for?" Chloe's lip trembled. "A silver stick, like the one on your desk." James's eyes closed. He pressed a hand to his face. Brenda's stomach turned. "So she really did?" She picked it up the morning of the attack, James said hoarsely. I left it on the console. She likes to play in my office sometimes. He looked at Brenda. They must have followed her from the house. Brenda reached over and smoothed Chloe's hair back from her forehead. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Chloe leaned against her, silent. James lowered himself into the chair opposite them, suddenly looking older than he had before. This isn't just a theft, he said quietly. If that prototype leaks, it could destabilize entire communication grids, governments, airlines, banks. I've spent years trying to keep it secure. And now... He broke off, shaking his head. Brenda stared at him. You're telling me those men weren't kidnappers? They were operatives, James said flatly, paid by someone who knows exactly what's on that drive. Who? That's what I'm trying to find out. Brenda glanced around the penthouse. Polished marble, hidden cameras, men with earpieces posted at the doors. And you think we're safe here? James hesitated just a fraction of a second. Brenda caught it. You don't. I think we're safer than we were, he said finally. But if the mole is who I suspect, they'll try again, which is why I need you to stay. Not just for Chloe. He met her eyes. For your own protection. Brenda looked down at her hands. She could still smell the flour from the night before, still feel the weight of the pail, the girl's tiny wrist in her grip as they ran. She wasn't a bodyguard. She wasn't even supposed to be part of this. Yet when she thought of Chloe sleeping here without her, her stomach knotted. Okay, she said softly. I'll stay. For her. Chloe exhaled, a little sound of relief, and pressed closer. James nodded. Thank you. But Brenda had already noticed something he hadn't. A man in a suit across the room, one of James's own guards, stealing glances at Chloe's dollhouse. His face was blank, but his eyes were not. She filed it away, quietly. Her instincts were humming again. That night, after Chloe had finally fallen asleep in the guest room, Brenda lingered in the doorway. The dollhouse on the dresser glowed faintly in the dim light. She crouched down and opened its little roof. Inside, tucked behind a painted bed, was an empty compartment, one that looked exactly the size of a USB drive. She closed it carefully and stood. Somewhere out in the city, someone still wanted that stick. Someone who knew where Chloe was. And Brenda had just stepped into a world where a maid with good instincts could be as dangerous as any bodyguard. Brenda had never walked on floors so polished they reflected the ceiling. Every step she took echoed in the vast space of the Lewis penthouse, her sensible heels clicking against marble that cost more than her yearly salary. She moved carefully, unsure where to look. A chef in a starched uniform passed silently by with a tray of food. A housekeeper in beige linen nodded stiffly, but didn't meet her eyes. The place buzzed with quiet precision, like a hotel where no one smiled unless they were paid to. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. She felt it most at breakfast. Chloe sat at the head of a long glass table, still in her pajamas, hair a mess. Across from her was a plate of crepes, berries arranged like art. Brenda stood off to the side, unsure where to sit, until Chloe patted the chair beside her. I want her next to me. The chef blinked. Miss Lewis. She saved me, Chloe said. She eats with me. And that was that. Brenda sat, cheeks burning. The chef set down another plate with slightly less ceremony. Brenda thanked him quietly. Chloe clinked her glass of orange juice against Brenda's water, smiling for the first time all morning. Later, while the staff buzzed around the penthouse, replacing linens, inspecting windows, adjusting surveillance, Brenda wandered the perimeter. Floor-to-ceiling glass stretched from wall to wall. The skyline was dizzying. Below, the world moved without noticing her, like always. Except now, someone was noticing her. She caught him again, the same guard from last night, hovering near the hall outside Chloe's room. Too casual, too still. She remembered his face, bland, forgettable, the kind of face that slips by unnoticed. She didn't like that. Before she could say anything, Chloe tugged on her hand. Let's draw, the girl said. Brenda followed her to the den. The guards didn't. They sprawled on the floor with a stack of paper and an expensive box of colored pencils. Chloe was quiet at first, sketching slow, careful lines. Then she said, without looking up, "Uncle Craig used to live here. Did you know?" Brenda stilled. "Did he?" she asked. Chloe nodded. "He brought me chocolates and said Daddy was too busy to notice if we took something from his office. He said we were spies." Brenda's skin went cold. "When was this, honey?" "Before the bad men came." Brenda pressed her hand gently over the child's. "Did you tell your dad?" Chloe shook her head. "He never listens when he's typing. But I told them about the stick. They didn't believe me." Brenda was already standing. "Wait here." She found James in the study, hunched over a tablet. His jaw tightened when she repeated what Chloe had said. "Craig was here the night before she disappeared," he admitted. "I didn't think much of it. He's always dropping by." "She said he encouraged her to take something from your office," Brenda said. "Said they were playing spies." James stood slowly, face pale. "That USB... She must have thought it was part of the game." Brenda hesitated. "And you still trust your security team?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a button on the wall. A panel slid open. Inside was a screen showing live security footage. Brenda stepped closer. One feed caught her attention immediately. Chloe's room, angle facing the bed. Too high to be part of the original setup. The camera was new, and someone had placed it from inside the apartment. Brenda pointed. "That's not right." James stared. "That shouldn't even exist." A chill passed through the room. Brenda turned to him. "You have a mole, Mr. Lewis, and I think he's already in the house." That night, Brenda didn't sleep in the guest room. She pushed the love seat against Chloe's door, lay down beside the child on the carpet, and stayed awake listening for creaks in the hallway. Somewhere inside this glass palace, someone was watching them, and she was the only one who seemed to see it. It was the sound that woke her, not Chloe shifting in her sleep, not the rustle of sheets or distant traffic. It was something wrong, a soft creak in the hallway, too careful, like someone stepping around the floorboards that groaned. Brenda sat up in the dark, every nerve wired. The penthouse was silent, but not at peace. Her body knew before her mind caught up. Someone was in the apartment. She reached over and touched Chloe's shoulder. The girl stirred, blinking in the moonlight. "Stay here," Brenda whispered. "Be very quiet." She stood, crossed to the door, and listened. Another sound, closer now. A shoe scuff. A zipper. Brenda didn't wait. She opened the door just a crack and peeked through. The hallway beyond was dark but not empty. Two figures in black moved down the corridor, quiet as ghosts. One carried something slung across his back, a tool or a weapon. The other turned briefly, revealing a black ski mask and a gleam of glass over his eye. Security was supposed to be posted outside. This wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal. Brenda closed the door silently, heart hammering. She turned, scooped Chloe into her arms. The girl clung to her without a word. She ducked into the walk-in pantry off the kitchen. It was small, cluttered with dry goods and baking supplies. She nestled Chloe behind bags of rice, tucked her into a low shelf and whispered, "Stay still. No matter what happens, don't come out unless I say." Chloe nodded, wide-eyed. Brenda eased the door shut. Then she turned, just as one of the masked men appeared at the far end of the hallway. He spotted her. She didn't run. Brenda grabbed the first thing her hand landed on, a glass bottle of cooking oil, and threw it. It shattered against the floor in front of him, slick and fast. The man stepped forward, slipped, crashed to the ground. She ran. The second man came from the living room fast. She dodged him, ducking low and slamming a lamp off a side table into his chest. He stumbled, but didn't fall. Then came James. He tackled the man from behind, the two of them slamming into the marble with a sickening thud. The first attacker was trying to rise, his hands scrambling for balance. Brenda didn't think, again. She darted into the pantry, grabbed the second pail of flour she'd seen earlier, and burst back out. The man lunged. She hurled the bucket. It hit him square in the chest, the lid spinning off. Another white explosion filled the air. He screamed, blinded. Brenda charged, slamming her shoulder into his gut. driving him backward, straight down the short service stairs. He crashed into the railing below. Sirens wailed in the distance. James pinned the second man until guards, real ones this time, flooded the apartment. Within moments the intruders were restrained. Blood streaked the floor. Chloe crept out of the pantry, sobbing, and ran straight into Brenda's arms. She clung to her like she was the only solid thing in the world. They sat on the floor together long after the attackers were taken away. James leaned against the wall, shaken and silent. Across the room, Detective Monroe snapped off her gloves and walked over. "They were professionals," she said. "Gear, formation, entry method. But one of them said something
Brenda
before we
looked up.
pulled him out." "What?" Monroe knelt beside her. He said, "Tell Belmont it wasn't supposed to go this way." James swore under his breath. His face was pale with realization. Brenda didn't flinch. "Craig." Monroe nodded. "It's time we talk about who he really is." Later that night, the penthouse was quiet again, at least on the surface. But Brenda knew better. They weren't just up against a mole or a kidnapping. They were up against a man with access, power, and a plan that hadn't ended with Chloe's rescue. And Brenda? She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was the only one Craig Belmont hadn't counted on. The farmhouse smelled like warm wood and apples. Brenda stepped onto the porch just after dawn, her shoes soft against the wide plank floorboards, a wool shawl wrapped around her shoulders. In the distance, mist curled through the orchard like breath on glass. It was beautiful, quiet, deceptively safe. Behind her, the screen door creaked open. Mrs. Jackson shuffled out in house slippers, hair pinned back, her mug steaming in her hands. "You didn't sleep," her mother said. Brenda shook her head. "Didn't try." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the fog shift through the trees. Then her mother added, "You never did like peace when it came too quiet." Brenda didn't answer. Inside, Chloe was curled up on a couch near the hearth, wrapped in a quilt. James had finally let her sleep outside the reinforced guest suite on the condition that guards remained on every exit and every window was locked tight. She hadn't let go of Brenda's hand all night. Detective Monroe had arranged for their relocation within hours of the second attack. "We're out of time," she'd said. "Belmont's people know where you live, and the penthouse has been compromised twice. You need somewhere they won't expect, somewhere quiet, controlled." James had owned the estate for years, a vacation property, gated, distant, surrounded by fields and trees. It looked like a postcard, until you noticed the cameras hidden beneath the eaves and the 2 armed guards posted in the barn. By mid-morning, Brenda was teaching Chloe to read again. They sat in the sunroom with an alphabet book. Chloe's fingers traced the curved letters, her voice small but steady. She sounded more like a child today, less like a survivor. Later they baked. Brenda pulled fresh rolls from the oven and let Chloe butter them herself. The girl giggled when the butter clumped. She smiled without fear for the first time in days. James watched from the doorway, arms crossed. His expression softened as he saw them. Brenda with her sleeves rolled up, Chloe flour-dusted and laughing. "She's happy here," he said quietly. "She feels normal here," Brenda replied, "even if it's just for a little while." He looked at her for a long time. "I underestimated you." Brenda arched an eyebrow. "A lot of people do." He chuckled under his breath. "I can see that now." That night, Brenda stepped out to clear her head. The orchard was silvered with moonlight. Crickets chirped softly. The guards had made their rounds and retreated to the front porch. She reached the edge of the grove, inhaled the cool air, and stilled. Movement. Just past the outer fence, a figure, too still to be wind, too far for detail, but unmistakably human, watching. Brenda backed away slowly, never turning her back, until she reached the door and closed it tight behind her. Then she went straight to Monroe. "There's someone out there." The detective's jaw tightened. "Where?" Brenda pointed. "Beyond the orchard." They were standing still, watching. Monroe didn't question it. She radioed the guards, barked quiet orders. Within seconds, boots thudded across the porch and flashlights cut through the dark. But by the time they reached the fence, the figure was gone. The next morning, Brenda kept Chloe close. They drew pictures, read poems, planted seedlings. But something had shifted again. The peace was thin now, like glass stretched too tight. And somewhere beyond the trees, someone still waited, not just for Chloe, for what she had, and for whoever stood in the way. Craig Belmont's face was on every screen. In the farmhouse's living room, James stood stiffly in front of the flat-screen TV, arms folded, jaw clenched. The volume was low, but the message was clear. "Categorically deny any involvement in the alleged attack," Craig was saying, his voice smooth as glass. "These baseless accusations are not only offensive, they are dangerous to the integrity of this company and to my decades-long partnership with James Lewis." Brenda watched from the doorway, Chloe on her hip. "He looks calm," she murmured. "He's always calm when he lies," James said tightly. Across the ticker at the bottom of the screen, "Tech mogul Craig Belmont responds to rumors of internal sabotage and kidnapping ties. No formal charges filed." "They're saying you've got no proof," Brenda said. "I will," James replied. "We just haven't found the link yet." But Brenda wasn't sure that was entirely true, because Chloe had been talking again, small pieces scattered like crumbs. That morning during breakfast, she'd said, "Uncle Craig always whispered when he came. He'd sit at Daddy's desk and put his phone in a mug." Brenda had blinked. "What kind of mug?" "A metal one. So no one could hear him," he said, "like a secret agent." James's head had snapped up from his laptop. Now Brenda stood in the doorway, arms crossed, thinking back over everything. Craig's frequent visits, the way Chloe had described the spy game, the dollhouse. She looked at Chloe, who was now drawing at the table. Brenda knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "do you remember where you were when you last saw the shiny stick?" Chloe didn't even pause. "In my dollhouse," Brenda's breath hitched. "Can I see it?" They climbed the stairs to Chloe's guest room. The dollhouse sat on the dresser, perfect and pink and still. Brenda opened the roof, peeled back the miniature quilt and tapped the back wall, hollow. She pried it open gently with a nail file. Inside was a second USB drive. Not a toy, not a replica, the real one. Brenda stared at it, then turned and marched straight downstairs. James sat up straight when she dropped it on the table. "You found it." "In the dollhouse, exactly where Chloe said it was." He picked it up carefully, inspected it. This is the original." "And it never left the house. That means Craig must have been planning this for weeks, maybe longer." James nodded slowly. "This is enough." "No, it isn't," Brenda said. "You need more than a USB. You need a voice, a moment, something undeniable." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Brenda pulled out her phone. "Chloe said he whispered near your desk. She said he put his phone in a mug." James blinked. "A Faraday mug, to block transmissions, but—" He trailed off. His eyes widened. He stood, ran to his briefcase and pulled out a slim black folder. Inside, security logs, phone records. One number kept popping up on secure lines, Craig's. "But he blocked transmissions," James murmured. "So why would there be data?" Brenda pointed. "Because the system logs the attempt, not the success. He didn't block everything." James looked at her. Really looked. Like he was seeing her for the first time again. "You've been paying attention," he said. Brenda shrugged. Someone had to. By nightfall, Detective Monroe had set up a private call with federal investigators. Brenda sat nearby as James laid everything out. The drive, the financial transactions, Chloe's eyewitness testimony, and the surveillance inconsistencies. Craig had paid one of the intruders after the second attack, after Brenda and Chloe were moved to the farmhouse. "This proves he didn't just set it in motion," Monroe said. "He's still pulling strings." And someone else was still helping him do it. Outside, the orchard swayed in the dark. Brenda stood at the window, arms folded. She'd thought the worst was over. But now she knew. Craig Belmont had allies, ones who hadn't shown their faces yet. And they weren't done. Not until Chloe was silenced, not until the last piece of evidence was gone. It began with the dogs. Just after 2 a.m., the silence broke. First, a sharp bark. Then another, closer, higher, panicked. Then came the sound of snapping branches and something heavy moving fast through the orchard. Brenda bolted upright in bed. Down the hall, Chloe cried out. Brenda was already moving, bare feet on cold floorboards, heart pounding. She flung open Chloe's door, found the girl sitting up in bed clutching her stuffed rabbit. "What is it?" Chloe whimpered. Brenda didn't lie. "Trouble." She scooped her into her arms and ran. Downstairs, lights flicked on. Monroe's voice barked orders over the comms. Guards sprinted toward the orchard. Outside, floodlights ignited. Too late. Shapes moved between the trees, black-clad, armed. "They're breaching the fence," someone shouted. James appeared in the hallway, half-dressed, eyes wild. "They're here." "They never left," Brenda snapped. "They were waiting." She didn't wait for instructions. She headed for the kitchen. She hid Chloe in the pantry again, heart breaking at the child's sobs. "You stay here no matter what happens." "Don't go," Chloe whispered, grabbing her arm. "I have to. I'll come back. I promise." Then she shut the door. She moved fast, her breath tight in her throat. In the kitchen, she grabbed the heavy cast-iron rolling pin from the drawer, then a bottle of oil. Her eyes scanned the room like a soldier reading terrain. She wasn't going to be caught off guard again. Glass shattered upstairs. A man dropped from the balcony, landing hard in the foyer. Brenda was waiting. As he crossed the tile toward the stairs, she slipped behind him and smashed the rolling pin into his thigh. He screamed, staggered, and she hit him again, this time in the ribs. Another figure burst in through the side door. She flung the bottle of oil across the floor. It exploded in a slick splash. The man skidded, slammed into a cabinet, and she kicked him hard in the gut. 2 down. But it wasn't over. She heard the pantry door open. "No!" She ran. Chloe screamed. Brenda rounded the corner just as a third man grabbed the girl from behind, yanking her from the shelf. "No!" Brenda shouted. She hurled the second flour bucket, kept for baking, straight at his head. The lid popped. The burst of powder engulfed them both. The man coughed, blinded, swinging wildly. Brenda tackled him down the stairs. They landed hard. She hit first, pain blooming in her shoulder, but rolled fast, grabbed the rolling pin again, and brought it down hard. The man didn't get up. Above her, Chloe sobbed, untouched. Brenda crawled to her knees, arms shaking, heart racing, the air thick with flour. Then came the red and blue lights, sirens, dozens of them, federal agents, police. Backup Monroe had called hours earlier, just in case. The orchard lit up like daylight. The men were arrested, all of them, including one with a phone still clutched in his hand, and a message on screen. Transfer complete. Payment sent. Sender, C. Belmont. Recipient, unknown. Brenda held Chloe close as paramedics checked them both. Her hands were scraped, her lip was split. She'd never felt more alive. James sat across from her, eyes wide, mouth open. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to, because the image was already viral. Not the first one, this one. Surveillance footage of Brenda Jackson in a flour-covered kitchen, taking down a masked intruder with nothing but a rolling pin and instinct. The maid was a warrior now, and the world would never see her the same again. By morning, the internet had crowned her. The maid who fought with flour trended on every platform. News anchors played the footage on loop. Brenda charging across the kitchen, wielding a rolling pin like a weapon, flour bursting around her like smoke. But Brenda didn't watch. She sat on the edge of the hospital bed, Chloe tucked beside her under a fuzzy blanket. The girl was asleep, finally. Her hand still clung to Brenda's sleeve. Across the room, James leaned against the wall, his tie loosened, phone turned face down on the tray table. "They want interviews," he said quietly. "Networks, book deals, endorsements, you name it." Brenda didn't look up. "I'm not a brand." "I know." He paused. "But people see you now." She sighed. "They see a story, a moment. They don't know me." James stepped closer. "Then let them see you, on your terms." She met his eyes for a long time. "I didn't do this for recognition," she said. I did it because a child was in danger. Anyone would have done the same. You keep saying that, he said, but the truth is, they didn't. You did. Brenda looked down at Chloe's hand, still gripping hers. She just needed someone to show up. You did more than that, he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope. She raised an eyebrow. What's that? Whatever you want it to be, he said. Financial security, a home, an education, a position with the foundation I'm starting. You name it, it's yours. Brenda stared at it. Then, gently, she pushed it back toward him. Start with giving her what she needs, she said, and let her keep what's kept her whole. He followed her gaze to Chloe. She wants to live with you, James said, at least part of the time. She asked me again last night. I know. He studied Brenda for a long moment. I was ready to fight it. I thought she needed therapy, structure, but maybe what she needs is you. Brenda's throat tightened. I won't keep her from you, he said. We can share that space. Build something that makes sense for her. Brenda nodded, silent. Then Chloe stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, bleary but calm. She looked around the room, then spotted Brenda and smiled. Are we going home now? She asked. Brenda smoothed her hair. We're going somewhere better. A week later, Brenda walked Chloe to her first day at public school. No bodyguards, no press. Just a little girl with a backpack and braids, swinging her lunchbox like any other kid. People watched as they passed. Some whispered, some pointed. A few even took out their phones. Brenda didn't flinch. She held Chloe's hand tight and walked with her head high, her step steady, her heart full. They reached the gate. Chloe squeezed her hand. You'll be here when I'm done? Always. Brenda watched her walk through the doors, then turned. A woman nearby whispered, That's her. That's the one from the video. Brenda smiled. Let them look. She had a life to live.